Welcome to another episode of the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest has dedicated lifetimes to planetary evolution. Currently, he is a master builder and owner of Twisted Sage Studios. In the past years, he assisted in the clearing of entire planetary grid systems, including the church, Masonic, banking, and reservation grids, while way-showing the establishment of new grid systems. The cleaning and clearing of cosmic proportions is where he thrived and grew in the old paradigm. His soul's passion has since shifted to the teaching and anchoring of new tools of consciousness, which are then anchored into the leading-edge energy tools produced at Twisted Sage Studios in South Dakota. Welcome to the show, Bryan Besco.
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, brother. Glad to have you. I was so excited to have you come up as a suggestion as I explored your website and the tools and your bio, and I was like excited for this, man. So because I'm learning about you too, I'm really curious. Just give us a little update on like who you are, how you got to where you are today, and what you're building, because the stuff on the website's fascinating, and the little bit that I've seen so far is really fascinating. So I'm just excited to get into the story.
Cool, right on. About 10 years ago, I started building the Tensor rings, which are the copper rings. On the physical, it's everything's made out of copper, but they're cut to the 100,000ths of a centimeter to create specific antennas. These original antennas that were discovered in the early 90s had to do with measurements that come from the pyramids. And we use some of the different ones from like the standard Teotihuacan unit that comes from a lot of the megalithic structures on the planet. But anymore, stepping into this newer energy, we're using these different measurements that come in that are related to the new geometries that are coming onto the planet. So for myself, where I was very science-minded for most of my life, and then about 12 years, I got a spiritual 2x4, and worked with my sister. My sister Brenda Schnoes, I refer to her a lot. She's here in the area in South Dakota too. Humble gal, farm ranch, but Thoth just walks with her. Metatron's her right hand. The things that she is bringing through and anchoring onto the planet that have never been here available to humanity before is huge. And she's probably one of the most phenomenal healers that I know on the planet. I mean, people with fist-sized tumors that disappear in 2 weeks, people with pancreatic cancer sent home to die, and all that stuff's cleared. And all she does is she walks you through and connects you to your full light and has you do the work of bringing in your light and wrapping up things. But anyway, so that's a lot of that's the basis to these tools that we make, to the Tensor rings, because as you and I were talking before we even stepped on here about the Patango rings and how we found that Patango, he even has a little etheric grid system that connects to all of his tools, and so even he is a master builder who's creating on those higher dimensional planes and anchoring that into the physical. And that's what we do with these tools here is, and even the straight line wands and things. We create everything on that higher dimensional plane, and it is housed there. And then we have to access that through the heart space and go through our guides to the guardians of the etheric templates. And then we bring that into the physical to where everybody can use these. So basically, we're all this leading edge, high energy work that we've been doing on the soul level of the stuff that my sister's been doing, which has been bringing in your entire soul spark into the human, the soul matrix, everything that you are. And then we're working with all the soul aspects, and we're just anchoring all that into the physical. And then doing all the other activations like the sacred heart, the quantum mind, bringing in the fields of universal peace, universal light, all that stuff we put into the etheric templates of the tools, and then they're housed within the rings. So then, like when you pick up any of these tools that we have, your soul is the one who is accessing everything else. So your soul is going to bring through all the activations, the clearing work, everything in your highest and best good with grace and ease. I mean, anybody who picks these up, if you drop one of these on the street and somebody picks it up, they're going to automatically be dropped down into the sacred space of the heart, and they're going to have that connection going, and then it would be up to the soul for everything else. I mean, we make these other devices that are for the environmental, and I've seen where one of these was dropped downtown LA, and for that entire, 3 city blocks, it goes out, and entities are cleared, because it is working with that higher soul of even an entity, a non-beneficial being, not incarnate. It even works with their higher soul. So once they're connected again, they drop their agendas and walk away. And that's kind of what all the work that we've been doing over the past few years is. When we come across these seemingly malicious beings, that's all we do is we go right to their heart. We find their soul spark. We connect them. And once you're connected again, it's like you drop agendas and walk away, clearing all the contracts, oaths, vows, promises, all that stuff. I mean, it's amazing work. And so, the tools is kind of secondary. All the tools that we make are secondary to the consciousness work that we're doing, because we have to do that before we can anchor that into the physical. So.
Wow, smokes. Okay, so I'm trying to. I want to bring it down to layman's terms because it's fascinating. Because
Sure.
I spent 3 months with Jason Stiles from iPyramids.net, and he builds these gnarly pyramids, these frequency generators. I was in Egypt with Nassim Haramein in the Resonance Science Foundation. I did meet Patango, and I have one of his rings. And I always say I was going through a festival, and somebody was looking at his rings. I was just saying hi to him, and I was like, "Don't let him open his mouth, because if he does, you're gonna buy the ring." If he says anything,
Right,
he just lets you do the thing. But he talks about, just copper being sacred, and I've learned through various teachers and masters who build either pyramids or healing technologies or whatever, why they use the tools, how it's based on mathematics. And then one of the things that came up for me was the Coral Castle. The guy who lifted all that stuff. So that's based on, again, mathematics and things that I don't understand. So for an average Joe, if we're talking about higher level entities, coding things, Sandra Walter will refer to that as well as her ascension path. She says it's light coded. And I'm at the point in my evolution where I'm like, okay, I believe you. I don't think you're just talking smack. I can't go there. I don't, I've been in the realm a little bit. I don't understand it. So she kind of explains it to me in different ways. And when she does, it makes sense. So one of the things that I do, and we did it before the podcast, it's just to set the intention that the highest good is for all, and so that's one of the ways that I can kind of connect to that higher dimension. So I guess the question would be, how did you access this information, and how do these tools work, for like a layman, just like maybe a way that they could kind of wrap their head around it? Because I'll just give you one small other example. There's these, when I was at Contact in the Desert, I got these little magnet rings, our bracelet, right? And the guy's like, it heals arthritis. And I'm like, what if you're healthy? I just want I want my vibe to be maxed. It's like, will this help me? He's like, well, it increases blood flow. So yeah, it'll help you. So I buy it, and I don't really feel anything because I don't have arthritis, but I'm all about it. So I have this on, and I'm visiting one of my buddies who actually has bad arthritis. When I came home, he's a mechanic. So I was like, hey man, maybe this is for you. And I just gave him the bracelet, and then I was like, did it work? He's like, yeah, dude, it works. And so. And it's just this magnetic bracelet. And for me, it's just like, I believe someone, I take the faith. I don't exactly know how that magnetism or that bracelet will cure arthritis, but I'm open to that possibility. And then when I experiment, it seems to always work out. So that's a long rant to give it back to you to kind of
Sure. Right on. Well, yeah, and that's with Tensor Technologies. It really is based in the sciences. I mean, we spoke at the Tesla Technology Convention a couple times. And, I was really trying to cater towards the science end. So we're actually featured in the second edition of the new Science of Water in what the rings are doing with water, which is pretty fantastic. But I guess to take a step back on The science side of the rings is that they create a tensor field. It's neither electric nor magnetic. We've seen photo imaging where that shows a magnetic field and you put a ring around it and it negates that magnetic field. So it's actually considered a room temperature superconductor. So it's an infinite flow of energy. So within these tensor fields, they show that it makes water lighter in weight in the lab because it's putting that positive right-hand spin to the water molecule, so it actually disappears from this physical reality, kind of like when you take Ormus and you put it on a scale like that gold powdered Ormus, and how it will fluctuate because it's such a high spin rate that some of it disappears and reappears within this physical measurable reality. And that's the same that it does with the water. And so that's some of the scientific. And then some of the other with that is we've done like biofeedback studies on like our cell phone tabs. This is one of the great big ones that we use on electrical meters and such. But it is restructuring electromagnetics, and it's restructuring just like it restructures water. So like our household electric 60 hertz, it is non-beneficial to the oscillation of the human heart because we have that electromagnetic field that comes out of the heart 6 feet across. So all the 60 hertz in the US is non-beneficial. That's why other countries, they use a different hertz of electrical. So what all of our tools are doing is they are changing that to be beneficial to the human body and bodies. It's beneficial to you as the whole. So like when we put one of these stickers on the household, like on your incoming electrical, it creates a sacred space within the home. I mean, I even sleep with my cell phone by my head at night because it actually restructures the frequencies, the electromagnetics, the radiation, everything to be beneficial to the human body. So, you can't measure electrical field or the tensor fields, but you can do the biofeedback on it. You can do the GDV photo imaging of how it, negates the magnetic fields. But really, there's no other scientific ways to measure this. And so when I first stepped into creating these tools, I was very science-minded and trying to prove these things. But man, after you see so much miracles and magic occur with this stuff every day, you're just kind of like, once it blows that science side of your mind away, you're just like, okay, I can trust this, especially when, maybe you can't feel the energies of these tools. But what it does to water, what it does to plants, pets, things like that, it just kind of helps to reset those beliefs on this. And you get desensitized to all this stuff. I mean, I stepped in here not being able to feel a thing, and now I can see and travel and hear and do all kinds of fun stuff because it just really opens up everything. So yeah, there's a lot in the science side that's pretty phenomenal about the tensor fields, but like I say, it's more about the consciousness work. And I'm surprised I didn't see you at Contact in the Desert. We've been there every year except for 1 year, and we have outside, we have our huge 13-foot tall chamber, and it's all lit up at night. The Ascension chamber, the 5D animator, we actually, the very first one, we finally finished at Contact in the Desert in 2014. And that thing's pretty phenomenal. It creates a tube torus that's 300 miles wide, and it restructures all electromagnetics. You stand up, you walk up these steps, and you stand in there on this big old platform of fruit of life, that 127 ring matrix. And as you stand there, these 13 rings come down over the body, and then there's a big tube torus up at the top, and it just automatically aligns you. I mean, a lot of people feel that swaying sensation. They're just aligned right in the center, and it brings in, drops you in the heart space, of course, but then it also brings in all your soul aspects. It does all the clearing work, soul contracts, entities, cords, everything. So that Ascension chamber, I mean, we have them set up here in South Dakota. We had one in LA area last winter at a shop there at the Aura shop. And these things, man, we have people that fly and drive from all over the world to come hang out in these guys for like 10 minutes. And a lot of people claims it clears cancer, addictions, all kinds of stuff. So I mean, and all it is it's just you know one of these rings, but just amplified greatly to where you're brought in. And again, it's kind of like what my sister does on the work with people where they heal themselves. It's just bringing in your light and clearing all the clutter, clearing all the static, and away you go. I mean, that's what these tools are all about, is our just our connection. Um, and then kind of give you an idea on those etheric templates. This is the golden light wand, and it's cut to a very specific measurement. That measurement is the standard Teotihuacan unit that was used to build Teotihuacan and a bunch of other megalithic structures on the planet. Graham Hancock did a lot of research on this guy, on that measurement. But this is the physical anchoring for an ancient tool that, as far as we know, it's older than the galaxy, probably older than the universe. It's a golden light rod that's about 22 inches high, and it has color and sound associated with it, and it exists here on this other plane. And this becomes the physical anchoring for it. Well, this thing is clearing timelines, realities, things like that for a person, which, some people can sense it when that work is done. But some of the more tangible work is it diverts geomagnetic lines and clears portal vortexes. So people out there in the professional dowsing field, they use their dowsing rods to find the geomagnetic lines, and they find out if they're helpful and beneficial, and then they'll clear those through a variety of means. But this is one that, you can use, and you can actually find that it moves those geomagnetic lines, close portal vortexes, and things like that. So again, it's a little bit more tangible to where you can find the actual work that's being done. And about this being an etheric template, we have one of the videos on our YouTube channel, on twistedsage.com YouTube channel, that gives you the attunement to this, and you don't need the physical rod. So, that's another thing, is we try to teach people how to use the energetic aspect of these tools, so you don't necessarily have to buy the physical ones. These are like training wheels. All these tools are. And so, and they help to be automatic. I wear all of my gadgets and tools just because then I can just automatically go about my day, yeah, so that kind of answers a little bit of the questions there, as far as the science and more of the etheric template stuff. But
yeah, man.
yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. It's really, really interesting because, like, I'm surprised. I was at Contact in the Desert last year, so I don't know if you went to that one.
Yeah.
Was it last year you went? You were there?
Yeah, I was outside, set up outside.
I must have walked past. I'm surprised I wouldn't have said anything, because I usually am so curious about all these things. And for me, I just kind of, like I said, I suspend disbelief. I try to learn about it, but then I experiment, right? And that's a lot of the things with consciousness, even like meditation or, visualization for sport, right? People, when I was growing up and even now today still think that that's a woo-woo thing. It was like, well, I'll try it, and then I'll see what happens. And the fascinating thing is, when you start to try all these different things, then you have a direct experience, and it really doesn't matter, why it works, if it works. That's kind of like where I'm at. And if science can prove it, that's fantastic. Great. Then we understand why it worked. But if I'm getting a result, right, same with something like Wim Hof breathing, so I kind of experiment with all of it, and I'm really excited about these tools coming through. So I guess I want to either go one of two ways with it. One would be exploring how someone might use your tools on a daily basis, and what that would be like for them. Just like a layman, you get a tool, you don't even know what it is, and maybe it's like a necklace or something like that. I charge my water. I also do prayer with my water. I think that's really important. I think water is really amazing. So putting tools, I actually have an arc crystal that I've given to my mom from Nassim Haramein, and I charge my water with that as well. So I'm all about it. I have this idea for a water filter in my mind that I'd love to create one day. Or exploring, the idea of where are we going, in your opinion, consciously, etherically, this new Earth, this planetary transformation. Because if you're going around doing clearing of Masonic, temples and whatever the case is, I have a friend who does that. And again, for me, I don't know where the lines are or how it works, but actually I've been learning more about where the grid lines are and being sensitive to energy after going to Egypt. I get it a lot more than I did before. So maybe you can just kind of speak on that and where you think we're going and how we can use these tools, because it really is consciousness based. It's about expanding to possibility, and that's what freedom is. That's consciousness. You could have one option of your life, which is like, go to your job, do whatever, that's one option. But if you have two options, now you have more freedom. And if you have 10 options, you have more freedom. And if you can line that up with your heart center, then it actually comes back to one option again, but it's an aligned option. So it's kind of interesting.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, because I'll take your second option there on what to talk about
cool.
too.
Perfect.
Because that's obviously my passion. And that whole thing about the heart center, yeah, that is totally it, because Nassim Haramein talked about that, as well as Drunvalo Melchizedek was one of the first people that started talking about that sacred space of the heart. And then, and that really is a huge thing, because when we move our consciousness from here down into that heart space, and we're working from there, and we're going out and doing all this big work, and you're doing it from here, you can be taken down some pretty wild rabbit holes that seem real, but they're not. But once we're in that heart space, then you can better trust, all this wild work that we do. And so as far as the grids, the consciousness, all that stuff, I mean, we've seen that the Earth has been shifting a lot over the past few years. Everybody talks about 2012 as being that big shift point. And then, 2014, 15, and in the 16s, where we saw a lot of the clearing of these grids, these old grids that held us into, the old matrix, the old belief systems, all that, because, that was, and the funny thing is that you can look at all that stuff and feel that, okay, this is non-beneficial, this was controlling humanity, and it was working against our free will and all this stuff. But, when you take a step back farther from all that, so you're right here in the muck, then you can take a step up and be like, okay, I can see all this stuff happening, and there's like these grid systems and frequencies that control people, and, fluoride in the water, whatever. And then you take a step back up higher, and you see from this perspective where we were at that we co-created all this together. So even, as we used to go through and we'd be like, oh man, this big bad being, he's violating the free will of the humans, things like that. No, it was a contract that we all had together. And it's the same with all these old grids, is that we created these to help bring in those veils for the old board game, which was, that same game that we've been playing for 26,000 years. And in all the different times that we've, as humanity, have come up and then crashed and come up and crashed. We just saw Greg Braden last weekend, and he talked about that, which was really fantastic, talking about those 5,000-year increments of humanity. And so this time we're stepped out of that whole game. And so that's why the veils are being lifted right now, that we are starting to see things from this higher perspective, and seeing that all this stuff was done that we co-created at one time or another. So we stepped in here and said, okay, yep, we're going to have these contracts, these agreements, and we're going to, create this whole stuff. So like the grids, a lot of those grids that the Earth cleared herself, and the help from a lot of other people all over the planet over the past few years, we're seeing that this new space that we're stepping into it's a whole new system of grid work. So basically we're seeing it, we're calling it universal light field, just because we really don't know what exactly this is. This is the newest thing that's anchored into the tools, is this field of universal light, for better words. And we're the anchor points. So, and right before that, ironically, I saw the pyramids and a lot of those old physical grid structures being released. I mean, they were just being released off the planet, because first we were clearing and watching being cleared all the other non-beneficial grids all over the planet, up above, below, everywhere. And then we just saw that old main structure because the pyramids are a way of creating grids. Um, these reality grids that we live in. That's why, the Masonics came along and everybody came along and built, steeples and churches and state capitol buildings and everything else, because they were diverting and utilizing those natural grid flows and systems to create a different form of reality structure for us all. So then once those are all cleared, then we had the pyramid structure that was creating that third density physical reality for us. But as that one is being released, we're seeing that this new field, this new grid system, is the human is the physical anchoring for this. And the human that has that activated sacred heart. So you always see those depictions of Jesus and Mary walking around with that trifold golden flame heart, that sacred heart. And it's different from that sacred space of the heart that we go to. That sacred heart that we all carry, once that is activated, then that's another frequency, another, energetics within the human. And so it's that sacred heart that we're able to go up and activate the pineal and then do the balancing of the left and right hemisphere to bring in the quantum mind. So once we bring in that higher mind, that quantum mind, that's where we're finding those fields of universal peace and universal light. And once we bring those down in to the heart as well, then we have our light in its entirety, every speck of everything you've ever been or ever will be, from beginning to source, back to source again. That is in the heart. Then we have that trifold gold flame, that sacred heart, those fields of universal peace, universal light. All of that is right there. And once we do that activation, then we see that there's this grid system that sets up between the sacred heart and other sacred hearts within your energetic circles. So this creates this big field of universal light. And when we've been trying to figure out what this is and where this comes from, we're seeing that this is that creation space of that new earth, of that new world. So that is like the new grid system. And so we're seeing that that is already there, and we're just doing the bridging between there and here and just following through in the process to get to that point. And of course, I've totally sat on that precipice of the expansion of creation. And I've seen that expansion of creation. I sat right there. And when you look off into the expanse of creation, you're creating. And so we need to we are coming from a space of a higher creation. We're not going to sit here and continually create from down here, all the fears and disharmony and everything. We're stepping up into a new space, into that heart space, that field of universal peace, universal light, and we are creating from there. So now then once this expands out and the 100th monkeys type of effect, the larger field we can create is the way that is. So the more people that are based within that field and are doing the clearing work and dropping the luggage, which, man, as you guys all know, in the past year, the universe has really lined up for us to drop our luggage and drop all of our shit. So that way, when we're looking off into that expansion of creation, we're not creating in that same fashion with those same scarcity, fears, everything. So that's really, where I see that we're going. And I really feel it's going to happen fast. I mean, for some of us, not fast enough, but, just seeing the chaos in the world is a great thing because, I got to have a little bit of spring cleaning, a little bit of that chaos before things can settle back in and come together. But, maybe that's an old system of beliefs too. But, it's so hard to say because, you hear a lot of people talk about how you can't look into the future right now because it used to be that, the Mayan predictions, everybody had predictions. And, it was predicted that this big opening, this big window for us to have this great, big, huge humanity shift was going to close in 2018. And even a few months ago, that's what, all the people who channel and everything else were talking about. It's like, yeah, that window is shutting down. But it didn't, that window didn't shut down. So, we're seeing that all those ascended masters and everybody else who've been helping kind of pull us all through all this stuff, they're stepping back. I mean, like for the past year or so, I mean, Thoth, who walks with my sister, he's stepped way back. He's now, now my sister, she used to channel the Elders 3, and then, and bring through all that wisdom and great stuff. Anymore, she channels her higher soul self. And so she channels her soul. And so that's pretty much that space that's being held with this opening and with us stepping forward into this new space and place, is that we're doing this ourselves, and that's part of bringing in your entire light, your entire being, because each one of us on this planet, man, has to be a master, or else we would not be here, because everybody talks about how Earth is such a big deal in all of creation, and it really, truly is. I mean, we're doing things that have never been done in the expansion of creation right now. And, even in that past 26,000 year cycle of the 5 to 10 civilizations that came and gone, I mean, we're doing it this time. And it has to do with, all the lessons we've learned, and we're able to bring that right here with us too. So in those past, Lee Carroll and Cryon at that conference last weekend, they talked about we've been in that cycle of 26,000 years 10 times, that we've actually became to the top, the peak of the civilizations, and then we crash and do it again, kind of like the Atlantean times, the Lemurian times, the original timeline, Lemurian, all that stuff. And archaeologically, it's really cool to see all that stuff too. But man, this time we're, like I say, man, we're changing the game, and things that we're doing today were not possible before. Everything is brand new right now. Kind of like to give you an idea, like Drunvalo Melchizedek, he brought the Merkabah activation in, years ago. And people were doing the Merkabah where they had to do breath work and mudras, and they had to do that every day for 2 years to keep their star tetrahedrons reactivated, spinning, creating that electromagnetic field, the human light body. You had to do that every day. And then after my sister and Thoth, because Thoth is the one who brought that to Drunvalo, and I asked Thoth, I was like, man, there's got to be an easier way. And he's like, well, yeah, you anchor it into the heart space. And so that's what I started teaching, was how to just do the mudras and breath work once from that heart space, and then that becomes a permanent anchoring. That Merkabah field becomes permanent. And like my sister and her path partner said, man, we did this every day for 2 years to get ours permanent, and you guys come along and do it, in a 45-minute session. And, then it just kept moving. It used to be that you'd have to have Thoth or Metatron come in to help you assist in reactivating that Merkabah field from the heart space, and for it to become permanent. And then it was about in February of 2015, I think, Thoth is like, no, we're at the point now where the soul can do it. So we no longer had to call in any outside help. It was your soul. If that was in alignment, all we did was the breath work, and boom, there it was. And then I think it was in 2015 as well that we found a new way to activate it. And it became what we call the crystal Merkabah. So I have a website too, crystalmerkabah.com, which is just basically, it's the same geometries, but it's just more tangible. And then part of that whole expansion process, we've also witnessed Gaia. Now, Gaia always had that star tetrahedron, and as her base geometry. And here a couple of years ago, she started to switch. It was no longer the star tetrahedron as her base geometry. And it actually became, I got one right here on my desk. It became this 12-pointed star. This star dodecahedron is what the base geometry that Gaia just landed with, probably about a year ago. That's her new base geometry now. And it's been interesting because the Merkabah activations that I've done with people over the past couple of years, it used to be that we found very few of these other Merkabahs. I mean, I started mapping these out with dowsing rods before I could see, and finding how many points there were on a human body and how far out it went. And, I found 4 different geometries and things that they were related to, and I was really excited, and It's like, yeah, man, I want to write a book on this and throw it in Metatron. They just laughed and they're like, man, you haven't even scratched the surface. Because the Merkabah fields, it's, as Drunvalo talks about in his work, there's like over 2,000 different geometries in this universe alone that people can use as Merkabah fields. And we always see, a lot of people see Metatron step in with that 64-pointed star, like Nassim Haramein's that 64 tetrahedral grid. I call that the Metatron's cube because that's totally the geometry that we see Metatron playing in a lot and stepping out of. And the people that have had that as one of their Merkabah fields, they always work with Metatron. I mean, people who have that 64-point star. So anyway, I mean, it's part of that progression, was why I was talking about the Merkabah and how you used to have to do the mood risen breath work for 2 years. And now it becomes automatic. I mean, you stand in the chamber or you're holding on to one of these rings where it's bringing in all of your soul aspects at once. And you do that Merkabah breath, which, we got bunches of meditations on YouTube about it. And you can see the progression from the older meditations to the newer ones. And the newer ones, we don't even actually talk about doing that, the Merkabah. It just happens automatically when we go through this process of bringing these new geometries through the body. But when you're using these tools or you're bringing in your entire soul, it activates more than just that star that's around you. It activates the ones that are related to you on all different planes. So yeah, I don't know, man. I'm super excited. I'm super excited. I got a 7-year-old daughter, and I know that she's going to see a pretty phenomenal world. And I think that we're all going to see some pretty phenomenal things happen in our lifetimes. And, I really feel that we're going to start to be able to work with DNA with our consciousness. That was one of the big things about that Lee Carroll and Cryon and Greg Braden and Dr. Todd workshop we went to in Denver, Colorado last weekend was, that's kind of along the lines of what we're talking about anymore with our passions, is being able to, these tools have always worked with the DNA. I mean, we have some of these rings that are reviving the encapsulated DNA, the telomeres to, on the DNA if it's within your belief system and within the highest and best good for the soul. But we really want to be able to start working with those little sleeper cells in the body to awaken those, and they're like stem cells, and to start doing all that work. So, I mean, like we have a friend in Australia, Greg, who does cell and organ regeneration processes, and that's consciousness work. People are regrowing teeth and organs through his work. And it's simply consciousness work. It's just simple little statements that you do. So, I mean, it's the consciousness work and our abilities, I think, is just going to be so enhanced, especially as we keep stepping as a whole, as humanity, we keep stepping out of that lower density matrix to where we can step up here to where we have infinite possibilities and we can do it. And it's, and we don't have to conform to the old lower density belief systems matrices, so it's all pretty super exciting.
Yeah, brother. Well, you touched on a great deal there. I was just taking notes the whole time. The thing that I really liked probably most was just activating the Sacred Heart, and I guess what I would like to ask, because for me, again, like all these realms I'm familiar with, whether it's through meditation or ayahuasca or DMT, sometimes it's a breath pattern, and, DMT activates, and I'm in this higher consciousness realm where, we're learning to put the words to it, because you go to a space, it's like if you've been on land your whole life, and then all of a sudden you get a boat and somebody takes you to the middle of the ocean and then you go scuba diving. There's no language for that. How the heck do you explain that to someone? So, I've been to these realms before, and so we're kind of like mapping that, where it's like, okay, there's a whale, but you're going to call it this big swimming thing, maybe
Right.
draw like the shape of it, because you don't know what the heck you're looking at. So I do agree and feel the same, that we are moving toward an evolution in consciousness that is very expansive. Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, same thing, of people curing themselves of terminal illness through meditation, through consciousness. In the books with the Ascended Masters, you got Yogananda, and a bunch of other people talking about these miracles. Even Coop Blackson, who was on my podcast a couple of times, he said his father performed miracles in Africa all the time. And when I asked him about it, these are real miracles. And he said he grew up like this. This was just normal for him, for his father to heal people. But he made it very clear. He said, it wasn't my father doing any kind of healing. It was connecting with divine source, God, nature, whatever, and just projecting that at the person so they remember their divinity, their connection. So it's really fascinating stuff. So I have two questions, and you can kind of take it as you wish, because I know you got to get your daughter in a little bit. One is, what does someone do practically if they want to release old paradigms, old agreements, past lives, trauma? Because I do believe that we're going through this process of our own crap and even ancestral memory. You know, a lot of the natives, that's very normal in native culture to talk about ancestral memory. And even if you think about, you know, one generation of your parents and whatever your parents put you through unconsciously or consciously, you're going to deal with that as a human, but it gets passed down by their parents, and it could be in the DNA. And then you could go kind of metaphysical with it, with soul structure, things like that, which people do past life healings. They do soul contracts, things like that. So the fastest way for us to get to this higher state of consciousness connection or activate the sacred heart. So we're living and we're acting and we're being that. And then we slowly get to experience this new realm. And the second thing is the clarity on this new earth paradigm, in the sense that we're building it for the first time. And I keep hearing that. And Unity Grace, who's actually going to come on today, she talked about it a little bit very clearly. And you touched on it a little bit, but I've heard time and time again that what we're going to be creating has never been done before. It's like there's no slate, there's no template. This is like the first time. It's a first. And so I don't know if you have any information to explain that deeper, but I've heard it a bunch, and I just can't explain it to anyone else with any reasonable explanation or style at this point. So maybe you can help.
Oh man, not really. Not really on that one. You know, it really is creation within the moment, and that's the only way that we can create, is within the moment, and one foot in front of the other. You know, and that's the whole thing. Nobody can see anywhere beyond 1 foot in front of the other, because it's all a co-creation. It all depends on all of us, you know, and that's something like Mark and the Great White Brotherhood that we work a lot with too. That's, you know, part of what they're talking about too, is that all this new creation is not going to be within our own being and creating our own little realities. We are going to be, true creation comes through those connections. And so as we are connecting and creating those grids, and that's why we see that field of universal light is such a huge thing, because it is bringing us all to a certain space to where we are connected, and connected in a good way, to where we can create, you know, and everybody sees this stuff a little bit differently, yet it all ties in together, because, you know, all this stuff, we are all each the blind man seeing the elephant type deal, where, you know that story where one feels the tail and they describe it, and one feels the trunk and the foot, you know, and we're all seeing and describing the same grand thing. You know, as long as we're all seeing it from the heart space, that is, you know, not taking down rabbit holes. And so, you know, that being in the heart space is really the biggest thing, you know, to begin with. So as far as to do the clearing work, because I mean, it used to be, as with all this stuff, like the Merkabah and everything else, and all the clearing work, we used to have to go step by step by step, and you know, and dive in, and, you know, maybe even use a lot of the mental to get through all this stuff, you know, and anymore it's quick and easy, because we see everything as energy. And once we have that connection from the heart, and that full connection and grounding without all the static, then we're able to do all the clearing really super simple, easy. You know, we have a lot of free resources out there on the twistedsage.com, on the resources page. There's like a lot of the stuff that we've done, though, is basically that old energy stuff. Like I say, you can go back and you can look at all the different progressions from the Merkabah activations. The newest thing that we have that would be able to not only activate the Merkabah, but also do all the clearing of non-beneficial soul contracts, the releasing of entities, all that stuff would be a sound cloud. So if you use SoundCloud Twisted Sage Studios, there is what we call the 5D animator attunement. And so basically it's just the audio that I created for a person who stands within that chamber. They listen to the audio and it's just that meditation. So within that meditation, I mean, it goes everything from bringing in your full light to standing within those geometries that do all the activation, the clearing of the emotional fields, and everything else. It's activating the Merkabah, but it's also taking your entire light into the heart, and then also finding the basement of the heart to where we drop our light, our divine awareness in there. And once we bring our divine awareness to anything, whether it's dense energy, so again, seeing everything as divine, dense energy is nothing more than divinity. And so once we bring our divine awareness to it, it uncompacts and it becomes light. So dense energy is actually a super compact form of divinity, of energy. And so that's really another point that why I think that things are going to transform so fast, is because we have so much dense energy. And as we all become our divine consciousness, our own divine light, and we start looking at things are just going to, the whole place is going to light up. But so on that meditation on SoundCloud, it will walk you through into that basement of the heart, where we carry a lot of these contracts that we found in that basement of the sacred space of the heart that kept us into that old matrix, that old matrix that we co-created together to bring in the veils and everything else and to have all those experiences. So once, because that was kind of the key to getting past a lot of that stuff, because we were aware that, a lot of these energetic implants that we were getting, or working with these non-beneficial beings that would come in, and cause dislocations in the body and everything else, I mean, this is some real stuff energetically that manifests in the physical that we deal with. We're like, man, we're aware that, we all co-created this together. Why is this stuff still happening? And so that's when we found that basement of the heart and brought our divine awareness to there, to where that's where we found a lot of these cords, connections, oaths, vows, promises, contracts, all that crap that kept us in that space of having to work within that duality. Because working within the duality has been the expansion of creation, because as you have that duality, that's what drives you. That's the drive. That used to be the driving force in the expansion of creation, was the duality. And so now we're stepping into that whole new game to where, man, we need to get rid of that duality, because that's no longer our drive. Our motivation, our drive and our motivation is for the expansion of creation, for the love, for everything beyond duality. And so that audio, again, it'll walk you through just that simple clearing. And, within 7 minutes, you can go through and have all that lifetime of clearing work done. It's pretty flippin' amazing and easy anymore. I mean, that's the whole name of the game, is to not make it complicated, because complicated is that rabbit hole shit, and we don't, once you go here and you're in that heart space and you're doing the work, the less complicated it gets. And so it's a hell of a paradigm shift, though. I mean, it is a tough paradigm shift to know that you are connected and grounded in, have your full light, and to be able to let go and trust in your divine awareness to take care of things. So that's what we teach people too, is I do these 10-minute activations with people on the phone, to where it anchors in that universal light field and all that, because still right now, until we get a large field of people connected into that, we're still having to, do a lot of this work mano a mano, one-on-one, for a lot of these activations to occur. But that sacred heart activation, that one is on that SoundCloud. I got 2 audios on the SoundCloud, so it's on one of those. We're doing that sacred heart and the quantum mind activations. So those are huge right there, because then we can bring in that field of universal peace. That field of universal light is there if you can connect into it. And that's the thing too, is that, some people can really connect into the energies of this stuff and can happen automatically. And other people, you need to actually, walk them through the processes. So if you watch any of our stuff, you may be able to just actually do it all right there without even looking at it, just because it's all soul to soul stuff. It's all, when any of the work that we do, we're working with the soul, kind of like with the tools, is that they're working with the soul, and that's its decision on what occurs. So anyway, kind of like our
Awesome.
golden light wand, man. The human can't use this, and that's one of my other points, is that the human can't wield the energetic tool. The human can hold on to the physical anchoring of that, but for that true tool to come in to clear timelines and reality, it is the soul that holds on to that. And that's the same with all of our tools here, is that we don't violate the free will of the human by having a tool that goes out 12 miles and does all the clearing work. It is up to it works on that soul level, each individual soul, to bring that through. And, I think all the souls are ready now. I mean, I really do. Every day is a new day in this expansion and creation. And, I think everybody's ready. I think we're all ready to just step up our games and do the releasing, the connecting, and start creating. They talk about 2018 as being a year of activations, and I think here within the next couple of years, we're gonna all be in the space of actually being creators. I really, really do. But again, it's, who knows what the heck's happening. I mean, like I say, it's all one foot in front of the other and being in the now moment. So, anyway.
Wow. Yeah, man, that's fascinating. Well, to ground those concepts out the way that I'm hearing them, just to kind of share for people, because it's very out there stuff, and most of my podcast is very out there stuff. So good. Right. The more out there, the better. However, this is the way that I kind of see it. If say you smoke cigarettes and you're unhealthy, right? You never go to the gym, you're severely overweight, you have lung cancer, you are just mangled, right? Well, now you have the opportunity through new technologies, information, and awareness, and other people to quit smoking tomorrow. Start drinking alkaline water, get yourself some CBD, you start eating some superfoods, clean out your diet incredibly, and find a great workout plan that's fun. That happens instantly. And if you do that, you're going to experience massive results within 6 weeks. I would say that would be 6 weeks, you're going to be a whole nother person. And what I've explored, because I've definitely explored consciousness technologies, and I'm in something called G Life, where it's all consciousness technologies and people who share information that are beyond me, and I just enjoy exploring them, even though like I say, I can touch the realm, but I'm not fully immersed all of the time. And they're saying upgrades too. They're like, no, you can learn this a lot easier. So one example on that front would be binaural beats, where I learned meditation the old school hard way, where I sat down and I basically just sat there and learned how to clear my mind. Well, now you can use binaural beats that create the brain waves, so it starts to entrain your brain, and it's a hack, essentially. Everybody wants the hack. And so traditionally binaural beats were just white noise, not that exciting. Now they've got Synctuition, which is one of my affiliates and sponsors, where it's a 3D sound experience that's creating it. So you just got to sit there and put in a little bit of practice. Or in the same way, the kettlebell has taken over, strength, because I do sports and coaching. Well, the kettlebell is a hack. You swing that thing 10 sets of 10 a day, and you're going to be strong, like freaky strong. And it's just a simple, tiny hack. So I just want to equate that with these new upgraded systems. And then the last reason why I think that is true, and I agree with you, is because we're elevating together. And once we have, one ascended master, two ascended, it's really energy. And when we can connect and more people are living it, that veil starts to, lessen, become thinner. And then we have more access to these miracles, to these trains of thought. So we're opening up this connection to someone else, where someone's reality and what they believe to be 100% real, it can be totally different, right? It's like the 4-minute mile example. Nobody can run a 4-minute mile. Well, somebody does it, then everybody does it. So that's where I think we're at the 4-minute mile of consciousness. I think,
Yes.
where, I'm looking for the yogis and the people who are, looking at these etheric grids and doing this work and looking at them like, how did you come across this? And usually it's a lot of hard work or something very fascinating, and connecting that a little bit and then doing the practices myself and then having direct experiences that are just uniquely my own, no better, no worse. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy or interdimensional. Really, as you said before, which I really like, is it comes down to the heart space, a divine heart space of intention, and that's the one thing I know I can control is my intention. And so if I can continue in that loop, things kind of generally take care of themselves, and I can be generally connected to other loving beings, and that becomes my life experience. And on the flip side, if you don't continue setting the intention, your life experience can kind of go any which way, which is your right to do also. But man, I know you gotta jump off. So thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you and your work and everything you're doing. Hopefully I'll see you if I go to Contact in the Desert. Definitely connect. And I like how I definitely want to talk more about the Cryon workshop and all that other stuff, because that's fascinating too. I'd love to have Lee Carroll on. That'd be amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And Greg Braden too, super epic. Those guys are very next level. And Cryon, holy smokes, whatever you can ask him about dimensions and realities and grid systems and what I mean, entities is just ridiculous. But anything you want to leave the listeners with for final thoughts, where to get a hold of you, any of that kind of thing?
Oh, sure. Yeah, just check us out at twistedsage.com. We have all the resources there, all the free resources, and there's links to the SoundCloud, YouTube, all that. And then there's all of our tools too. And we try to make all the tools affordable too. So, I mean, like I said, you don't necessarily need the physical tools. We try to give everybody the work through the meditations. But, if you're going to buy the physical tools, always buy the golden fire. I mean, we're trying to make this stuff as accessible to everybody as possible. So anyway, yeah. And then maybe someday, Matt, maybe someday we can get my sister on here too, because she's a pretty phenomenal channel, and I think you guys could have a lot of fun there too. So one of these days, maybe we can do another show and have her on here too. So
yeah, totally. Well, yeah, introduce me, man. I'm all about people that are bringing in the heart vibes. If your intention is to serve other people to the best of your ability, and you're actually doing it, and you're not doing it to be cool, you're just doing it because because you resonate with actually being of service, then yes, always welcome here. That's the point. So heck yeah, man. And I'm definitely going to pick up something, so I'll get your recommendation after here. What tool do I get? I think I got an ion emitter bracelet here. I had the one I had to give to my friend because he's, his arthritis, so it's a gift, but I'm going to need that hooked up. So I think one of your bracelets will go nice to the connection. And I got the
Right
crystal
on.
and the organite on the neck. So
nice.
I'm all about it.
Cool. Yeah. Always available to help anybody pick out the right tools. But, to me, again, it's more about the consciousness work. So I encourage everybody to check out the free resources. And, that's really our passion. But selling the tools helps to further the passion. So, we welcome you to do that too. So anyway.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, brother. Well, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to dive deep too on the consciousness aspect of the meditation. I'll just say, because of time, it's very important what you can do. I've heard you can also turn on your DNA through consciousness, which I 100% agree you can do. But it begins exploring your inner world, and that's what meditation does. And that's something that I do that most people don't. So these ideas can seem mystical, but I'm like, oh, interesting. It's basically flying my spaceship into my body through my own consciousness, and that's all meditation is. So when you're saying this to me, I'm actually going through the process in my mind, like, oh, snap, interesting. And whatever you can imagine and bring to that realm, you can turn on, and it becomes physical in this realm.
Yes.
And I know that. I absolutely know that. Nobody is going to tell me otherwise, because I know it. And so you need, once you start to experience that and experiment, then you know it too. And it doesn't matter. Then all you want to do is share it with everybody else. It's like, no, it does seem simple, but the thing is, you're just not doing it because you're stuck in the monkey mind doing that thing. And it's very real. It's, no, this is tangible. Yes, it is tangible, but this is also equally real, if not more real, because it's like the heart of creation. And now you become empowered. Now you become more of a sovereign being and more of a creator through your own consciousness, rather than being kind of swept down the river, waking up, getting all confused, just doing what you got to do, right? So,
Right.
yeah, I just wanted to add that. But man, it was a pleasure. I'll let you go, but
You
thanks
too.
so much for coming on. We'll stay in touch, and yeah, I'll talk to you about getting some sweet tools.
Right on. Cool. Thanks, man. Honor and a pleasure to be here.
Okay, see you guys.
All
Thanks,
right.
brother. See ya.